Pagunara Visakhapatnam, Pagunara. A very pleasant morning to one and all present here. I am Mehul Jagetia from Ahmedabad, feel honoured to be here in the jewel of the East Coast, the city of destiny, the city of Visakhapatnam. Our association of 15 minutes will involve discussing an overview of India's 115 revenue from contractual customers. This shall be our agenda for the next quarter of an hour, wherein we shall be deliberating about the conceptual shift of risks and rewards versus controls. We shall also be discussing the 5 steps to revenue recognition. Revenue being one of the most critical financial statement measures for both preparers as well as users of the financial reports, I think as chartered accountants, as auditors, it is clinical for us to have a deep and thorough understanding of the implications that this standard brings in. A company's capability to grow, to sustain in the market is more often than not being judged by the top line of its income statements. Many of the regulations of various different laws are also based on the turnover of the company. Hence, considering the level of risk of material misstatement involved in the class of transaction that this standard deals with, India's 115 has wider importance. India's 115 was made effective for accounting periods beginning on or after 1st April 2018. It replaced the erstwhile revenue recognition standards, India's 11 construction contracts, India's 18 revenue and revised guidance note on accounting for real estate transactions. It has been prepared in convergence with IFRS 15, revenue from contractual customers. The objective of India's 115 is to establish the principle that an entity shall apply to report the nature, amount, timing and uncertainty of revenue and cash flows arising from a contract with a customer. Thank you. The scope of India's 115 extends to all contracts with customers to deliver goods and services except when that contract is covered under other indices like leases, insurance contracts, except when that contract is covered under other indices like leases, insurance contracts, financial instruments and other contractual rights or obligations. If there is any non-monetary exchange between entities in the same line of business, to facilitate sales to a third party, that shall also not be considered under India's 115. For example, there are 2 oil companies who have agreed to exchange oil to fulfill the demands of each other's customers as and when required at different specified locations. India's 115 will not apply to such a transaction. Coming to the conceptual shift of risks and rewards versus control that this standard has brought in. As we all have studied, under the erstwhile principles of Ind AS, we used to recognize revenue when significant risks and rewards of ownership were transferred. But under Ind AS 115, revenue is to be recognized when control is transferred. Control is a much broader term than risks and rewards. We may also say that risks and rewards is just one of the many factors that may indicate an existence of control. Now, what is control? Control has a simple one-liner definition which says, control refers to the ability to direct the use of and obtain substantial economic benefits from that use. Both these criteria have broader meanings of their own. The first one, that is the ability to direct the use of goods or services, refers to the right to direct how and for what purpose the asset is going to be used. Let's take an example. I am a manufacturer. I have appointed distributors all across the country who shall deliver my product to the ultimate customers. I shall transfer my goods to the distributor's location and the substantial risks and rewards relevant to ownership shall be transferred when the distributor receives the goods. Under the erstwhile principles of Ind AS, we used to recognize revenue at this point when the distributor receives the goods. Now, adding a twist to the story, let's say the distributor cannot sell the goods to any customer of his own choice and charge any rate that he desires. He has to first get it approved by me. That is, I have the right to decide how and for what purpose the asset is being used by the distributor. That is, I have the control of the goods in the distributor's custody. Therefore, control will be transferred when the distributor delivers the goods to the customer, and revenue is to be recognized when the customer receives the goods in my books. Ind AS 115 suggests a 5-step model for revenue recognition. We shall discuss each of these 5 steps in detail. Step number 1. Identifying the contracts with the customer. Both these terms, contract and the customer, have been clearly defined by the standard itself. A contract, as we all have studied under India Contract Act 1872, is an agreement enforceable by law. Extending the same definition further, a contract according to Ind AS 115 exists if it is legally enforceable and it is approved by either of the parties and they are committed to their obligations. It has commercial substance, that is, monetary or non-monetary consideration must be present. The rights to goods or services and payment terms can be clearly identified, and collection of consideration must be considered probable. Now, who is the customer? A customer is a party that has contracted to obtain goods or services that are an output of the entity's ordinary business activities in exchange for consideration. This is a simple definition, but it has been clearly defined by the standard itself so as to avoid any misunderstandings at the time of application. Step number 2. Identifying the performance obligation. A promise to deliver distinct goods or services or a series of distinct goods or services creates a performance obligation. Now, when do we say that the goods or services are distinct? When two conditions are satisfied. Namely, number 1, the goods or services are capable of being distinct. That is, the customer can benefit from the use of the good or service on its own or together with other readily available resources. Criteria 2. The goods or services are distinct within the context of the contract. That is, the promise to deliver that good or service can be separately identified from different other promises under the same contract. If none of these criteria is satisfied, the goods or services shall have to be combined with other goods or services under the contract until the bundled arrangement qualifies to be a single performance obligation. Let's take an example of scenarios wherein single and multiple performance obligations can be present. Scenario 1. An entity provides an integration service of building construction and delivers a single output to the customer. The customer cannot use any single service of the entire output on its own. That is, he will get a single output and he will use it in its entirety. Therefore, this has to be accounted for as a single performance obligation. Scenario 2. The entity delivers an equipment to the customer and a separately identifiable installation service. Now, both these, the good and the service, are separately identifiable. The use of the equipment is not dependent upon the installation done by the entity. That is, the customer could have obtained the installation service from any other entity as well. Therefore, these two are separate performance obligations and accounted for as different in the books of accounts. Step 3. Determining the transaction price. A transaction price is nothing but the amount of consideration that the entity expects to be entitled to in exchange of transferring the goods or services. The entity shall consider the terms of the contract and the customary business practices as well, followed by others in the industry. An entity shall also consider the effects of all of the following while determining the transaction price. Number 1, variable consideration. If any variability is present in the contract, such variability shall be estimated at the contract inception. Second one, non-cash consideration. Let's take an example of barter exchange, an asset for an asset. This transaction shall be valued at the fair value of the asset received. If the fair value cannot be readily determined, it shall be measured at the standalone selling price of the asset given. Time value of money. If there is any significant financing component involved in the contract to transfer the goods or services to the customer, such contract shall require adjustment of the time value of money. For example, let's say more than a year's credit period has been allowed to the customer to pay for the goods or services. Such transaction shall be adjusted for the time value of money. Last one, consideration payable to a customer. This shall be accounted for as a reduction to revenue or as a payment of separate goods or services as the case may be. Step number 4. Allocating the transaction price. The transaction price as determined in the step number 3 shall be allocated to each performance obligation in the proportion to its standalone selling price. Now what is the standalone selling price? The price at which an entity would sell those goods or services to any other customer within the market. How to determine standalone selling price? The first method should be by observation, that is, observing the standalone sales of that goods or service under the similarly situated market. If the standalone selling price cannot be determined by observation, any of the 3 methods shall be used, namely adjusted market assessment approach. That is, the price that the competitor charges for the same good or service adjusted to our cost structure. Number 2, expected cost plus margin approach. That is, adding a certain percentage of margin to the per unit cost of the product. Number 3, residual approach. That is, the balancing value after deducting all standalone selling prices of the other goods or services under the contract from the total transaction price of the contract. The last step, that is step number 5, recognizing revenue. According to Ind AS 115, revenue shall be recognized in the pattern of satisfaction of performance obligations. That is, if the entity satisfies performance obligations at a point in time, revenue shall be recognized when the control is transferred. And if the entity satisfies performance obligations over a period of time, revenue shall be recognized as the control is transferred. The entity shall measure the progress towards completion at the end of each reporting period. The entity shall determine whether it satisfies the performance obligations at a point in time or over a period of time at the contract inception itself. Now, how do I determine whether I satisfy performance obligations at a point in time or over a period of time? If any of the following criteria are satisfied, you are set to perform your obligations over a period of time. Criteria 1. Customer simultaneously receives and consumes the benefit of the good or service as the entity performs its obligation. That is, simultaneous consumption is there. Number 2. The entity's performance creates or enhances an asset that the customer already controls. Number 3. There is no alternative use of the asset to the entity and the entity has a right to get payment for the performance completed to date. If any of these criteria are satisfied, you are set to perform your obligations over a period of time, and if not, you are set to perform your obligations at a point in time. Let's have a look at certain indicators of transfer of control. It shall be noted that the list is not an exhaustive one, and the facts and circumstances of each case shall be studied carefully before commenting whether the control has been transferred or not. So, any of the following criteria occurs, we may say that the control has been transferred. Namely, entity has right to payment for the asset, or the customer has legal title to the asset, or the entity has transferred significant risks and rewards of ownership of the asset to the customer has obtained physical possession of the asset, and the customer has accepted the asset. It should be noted that risks and rewards is just one of the factors that can indicate the transfer of control. Let's have a look at one example of applying the 5 steps. So, At the first step, we identified a contract with a customer worth rupees 110 lakhs. Then we divided the contract into different performance obligations, which are delivering the equipment, providing training, providing support services, and providing extended warranty. We then allocated the transaction price of 110 lakhs to each performance obligation based on its standalone selling price. Then we determined that we satisfy the performance obligations at a point in time in case of delivery of equipment, and we satisfy performance obligations over a period of time in case of all other services. Hence, we recognize revenue accordingly. I would like to conclude by saying that though India's 115 has brought in significant use of judgments and estimates, it is only towards an aim for a better and more transparent accounting for revenue. Since one accounting year has already passed since its application, we have several financial statements of various companies of various different industries who have adopted this index for the first time in the previous financial year readily available. Based on a study of these financial statements, we can clearly see how significantly the top line of various businesses has been impacted. The impact has particularly been severe for companies involved in complex transactions with multiple components and variable considerations. Specifically in sectors such as telecommunication, technology, real estate, aerospace and defense, building and construction, contract manufacturing, etc. May you have any questions? I am open to questions. You may approach me later. May you have any doubts regarding this index. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. This was Mehul Kanekwa from Ahmedabad, India's first own university in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehul. With your wonderful kickstart and resourceful presentation.